So we'll start out tonight with Linda Nemec Foster. She's the author of 12 collections of poetry, which is amazing, including Amber Necklace from Gdańsk, which was the finalist for the Ohio Book Award in Poetry, Talking Diamonds, a finalist for the Forward Magazine's Book of the Year, and The Lake Michigan Mermaid, which was a 2019 Michigan notable book. Her work has been published in magazines and journals such as the Georgia Review, Nimrod, Quarterly West, Witness, New American Writing, North American Review, hard to get into, Patterson Literary Review, and Verse Daily. Foster's poems have also appeared in anthologies from the US and the UK, but they've been translated in Europe. They've inspired original music compositions and have been produced for the stage. Her first commissioned libretto, Spirit of the Lake, will have its world premiere in 2022. So I want to hope that you keep us posted on how we can see that, listen to that. She has received nominations for the Pushcart Prize and awards from the Arts Foundation of Michigan, ArtServe Michigan, National Writers Voice, Dyers Ives Foundation, the Poetry Center in New Jersey, and the Academy of American Poets. From 2003 until 2005, she served as the first poet laureate of Grand Rapids, Michigan. In the fall of 2019, she was the poet in residence at the University of Bielsko-Biała in Poland. Her new book, The Blue Divide, was published in 2021 by New Issues Press. She's the founder of the Contemporary Writers Series at Aquinas College, and we are just delighted to have you here with us tonight, Linda. So please, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Judy, for that wonderful introduction. And Sandy, it's so wonderful to see you and to read with you. And to everyone around the world, Australia to Washington to Manistee and Douglas, Michigan. Thank you. I am going to be reading mostly poems from my new book, The Blue Divide, that was just published a few months ago. And I will begin with a poem that was also published in South Florida Poetry Journal. So hats off to Lenny De La Rocca for accepting this. And it is a poem inspired by the work of a Spanish artist. His name is Jaume Plensa. Jaume Plensa. And he had an installation in Grand Rapids a number of years ago. And I was commissioned to write a poem about the exhibit, and this is it. It's called In the Mist of Dreams, and it's in 3 parts. In the Mist of Dreams, 1, disease. The father trapped in his body, disease of his mind, closing the door of his prison so tight, not even the idea of moonlight, faint light of his dreaming self, can escape. He shuts his eyes. He memorizes the language of regret, and it brands his face like the lexicon of a sleepwalker. I should have planted the azaleas in the month of rain. I shouldn't have prayed so loud to the silent face of God. Endless words that fill a small room with empty air. He imagines his feet in the places they have walked in the world, the gray shores of Normandy to the broken ridges of Montana. After all these landscapes, what shoes to wear at his funeral? The possibilities surround him like discarded souvenirs from a forgotten vacation. What can he do with the rest of his life but pretend he's a cloud, dusk-tinged stratus that marks his borderland, the abandoned horizon? 2, hunger. The Spanish mystic cannot satisfy his hunger. Locked in a cell in Toledo, he envisions God as a sharp wind, a burning ember, a vast mountain only the night can embrace. His hunger does not crave any simple gesture, bread and water once a day, but only the bread of angels, God himself. How would the divine taste on his tongue? The mystic closes his eyes and tries to imagine swallowing pure light, the radiance illuminating a path from his mouth to his heart to his feet. Who needs shoes for such a journey? He remembers the ancient prophet removing his unholy sandals to approach the holy fire, fire that burned but did not consume, until it flamed that night in Toledo in the belly of the saint as he rehearsed the language of heaven. 3, insomnia. The man who cannot sleep has been here before, a room filled with memory and the faint sound of leaves as they cover the ground. In the waking world, he is an intruder, an interloper, as uneasy in his skin as the museum curator at Birkenau discussing the glass cases of shoes and hair. At night, he is reduced to reinventing every scenario of his life, from the opening credits to the quiet denouement. His eyes may not be open, but he remains forever awake and counting letters, not syllables, words, not ideas, phrases, not sentences. The people he has abandoned scatter, but not before they each leave their imprint. Fashionable leather boot, small sneaker, red and spiked heel, brown and scuffed loafer. Each one demands attention. Each one a different story he narrates in seamless detail to the patient and faceless moon. Quite a few poems in the Blue Divide are based on visual art. They're ekphrastic poems, and I think it's because I'm a frustrated visual artist. I never got beyond stick people, folks. Stick people and a round thing for a sun. That was about it. So a number of the poems are ekphrastic poems in the Blue Divide. And this next sequence of poems is called The Artist's Notebook. It's a sequence in the book of 7 parts, but I'll only read a few of them now, but they all stand alone as separate poems. So this is from The Artist's Notebook. How to paint an approaching storm. Pick a clear day while they still exist. Blue sky, yellow sun, the predictable boredom of a calm landscape. Blend in the anxiety of waiting, the cicadas suddenly hushed, the hawk lost in its endless spiral. Keep mixing the afternoon in colors that are silent, gray of stone, black of the stone shadow. The palette of dusk arriving too soon. Close your eyes and count to 100, to your birthday, to the square root of memory, until the sky splits into a crooked river of light. Now stop. Feel the rain on your face, as if for the first time, as if you have never been here before. This next poem is about the Italian Baroque artist Bernini. Great sculpture, great art, but I'll let you decide about his life. So this is called Backstory. And I talk about his actual sculptures, his actual pieces of art in this poem. Backstory. The open mouth of Saint Teresa and her ecstasy. The death of Blessed Ludovica and its mirage of light. Pluto's wide hand on the marble thigh of Proserpina and the tears that seemed to stream down her cheek. All of this passion by Bernini can overwhelm any young tourist, but it's his Daphne and Apollo, the girl growing leaves and roots while the god is in hot pursuit, that makes my daughter gasp, better than Michelangelo. But she doesn't know Bernini's backstory, the jealous rage that made him force a servant to slash a woman's face until it wasn't a face. But why ruin the moment? No artist is perfect, even though the art can be. Consider his Teresa and her angel. The marble floats as if it's already in heaven. Art and life. Who can sculpt grief like Michelangelo? His writhing slaves, incomplete and still locked in their marble wombs, mirrored an agony only matched by his. He knew how to perfect it on the silent face of a perfect Madonna, mother and dead son. But imagine this other grief. At the moment when another woman's grown son died, not by crucifixion, but by cancer, she crawled into his hospital bed, held him, and sang lullabies until he was cold. What image embraces the deeper pain? The art enshrined in a large church, or the private tableau hidden in a corner of suburbia? Our master of grief cannot answer, only asks another question from the silent marble growing from his hands. And I'll go on to some other poems about family, but this is the last poem about art from the Blue Divide. Gift, and this is dedicated to my dear friend Jim Carcina, fine artist in Michigan, who passed a little over a year ago. Gift. A year before my son met the woman he'd marry, you painted this landscape of rocks, water, and thin line of horizon. The place consumed by a lake and its obsession with the idea of blue. The idea hugs the shore and won't let go, not for the stark branch insisting on its existence, or the boulders losing their sense of decorum with wild layers of movement. Isn't that how love works? The spinning and falling, obsessing and wondering what happens next. The view from this high bluff can't predict the future, let alone the future of our children. Impossible to know from this height. All we can do is give the gift and tell them to hold on to each other, to that idea of blue, the expanse of the landscape that can't be contained in a single image. That's what you give them. From art to science. And I think I was always a frustrated astronomer because I didn't have the math brain to go on with it in the college, but my daughter did, and she double majored in physics and astronomy in college. So this is my attempt to understand all of that. So this is called the theory of everything. It's a physics concept. There's a lot of things in here about physics, but you don't have to worry about understanding it because I don't understand it. So it begins with a quote from a catalog. And this is a catalog from the teaching company. They're talking about the theory of everything. They say, quote, a vision of physical reality so at odds with our experience that it defies language. So here am I trying to write a poem with language about this. So here we go. The theory of everything. Einstein's theory of relativity can be stated in one concise sentence, but what is it? What noun placed next to what verb, modified by what adverb, holds the secret? I ask my daughter, the aspiring astrophysicist, to speak the sentence, and if not the concise sentence, then the undulating lines of pure thought that can describe the theory of everything. Her mother, who froze in high school geometry, cannot comprehend how tiny strings vibrating in a microscopic universe can hold everything together, from DNA's double helix to the silky translucence of a moth's wings to Bach's concerto for two violins. How it can all be reflected in 11 dimensions, 11 parallel universes wrapped in empty space, a dark energy of nothing. My one-dimensional brain boggles as my daughter explains, but the messy world of an atom's nucleus, the photons and quarks, the positrons and muons, the WIMPs, and the Higgs boson all blur in my tired head. She describes a famous physicist's lecture, and I can only imagine him at the podium with mismatched socks, Dark blue of sky mistaken for dark black of night. No use searching my finite space for a unified theory when I can hardly recognize my own daughter as she lives more and more in her own universe and leaves my small world behind. The daughter who waxes and wanes like the moon, loves me and pulls away like the tides, listens to a rock group called the Magnetic Fields sing about the unscientific mess of love, loses car keys and forgets to turn off the stove when the primordial soup boils down to nothing. The daughter who as a child was lost in a Chicago museum filled with the physics of Magritte, and as a smaller child noticed the silica shimmering in a lake in Nova Scotia and deemed it diamonds. This woman who now peers at the stars in the night sky and sees the same brilliance. And in the morning thinks the warm air of a January thaw is not fog, but the broken snow on fire. The woman who knows the textbook explanation, yet wants to believe in the flames. The daughter who looks at me with my cosmology of tentative words, tentative silence, and tries to see the mother, the proof that experience does defy all language and everything is connected, whether we can dare to believe it or not. Just going to read a few more poems on family, then I'll end with some newer work. I talked about my daughter, so here's a poem about my mother. And my mother loved gossip magazines. That's all you need to know about her. She loved gossip magazines, and she loved to clean the house. So you're going to get this in the poem. I'm going to talk about Windex. It's kind of like a precursor of Windex. It was old school stuff you'd put on a window and a mirror. It was either pink or white, but then you rubbed it and it made your window shine. I also talk about Prussian bluing. It was a laundry additive that you would put in your washing machine for white clothes, not, dark clothes, but white clothes. And it would make them, believe it or not, this blue water would make them sparkling white. So this is about my mom. It begins with a quote from Ava Gardner when a reporter asked her, describe show business. And she said, quote, it's the kissiest business in the world. You have to keep kissing people, unquote, Ava Gardner. And the poem is called A Kiss is Just a Kiss. My mother, in her own words, didn't know much, but what she knew, how to darn a sock's hole until its universe imploded into a white dwarf of string theories, how to polish window wax into a mirror until it reflected a gaze more intense than Snow White's stepmother, how to magically stir the cauldron of laundry to transform Prussian bluing into a pure white shirt. And then her encyclopedic knowledge of movie stars. She never called them actors or actresses, but stars, as in the heavens, the constellations, the Big Bang. Her lessons were taught by chain-smoking gossip columnists. She pored over their theses, illuminated in the pages of Confidential, The Lowdown, Hush, Hush, and Uncensored. My mother could tell you how Jean Harlow really died. It wasn't kidney failure, but she was poisoned by all that peroxide she used on her hair. How Greta Garbo brushed her teeth. She never used toothpaste, only salt. How Joan Crawford plucked her eyebrows. She didn't, enough said. My mother loved the backstabbing of it, the kiss and tell of it, the guilty pleasure of it. And when she read this quote from Ingrid Bergman, a kiss is a lovely trick designed by nature to stop speech when words become superfluous. My mother, with her blue hands and absent husband, almost believed it. Just a few more poems I'll read for you. This next one is also from the Blue Divide, and this will be the last one I read from the Blue Divide before I go on to a couple more newer poems. And this is, I talked about my daughter, my son, and that one art poem, and my mother. So here's a poem about my father. On the first anniversary of his death, I dream of my father. I don't exactly dream of him, but his voice. I'm calling from Krakow on the last night of my trip. Dad, I speak in to the white phone. His voice on the other end sounds deep and hoarse, as if he has a bad cold or has been talking a lot. Yeah, he replies. I'm in Krakow, your mother's city. Oh, really? How's the weather? Fine, it's been good. I want to tell him about this place he's never seen. The market square, gleaming like afternoon light, no matter what time of day it is. The starlings swooping like a black cloud in Grushka Street above the statues of the 12 apostles. Hearing my favorite Chopin nocturne played in the Broniarowski Palace by a young Japanese woman. Gee whiz, I could hear him say, a Japanese woman living in Krakow. How that nocturne reminded me of him, the long goodbye I never got to say. But I just talk about inconsequential stuff. The heat wave that turned into a soft rain last night. The ugly Forum Hotel finally boarded up and turned into a giant billboard for Polish beer, the one and only Żywiec. That's nice, he says. Well, I gotta go. I've been talking too much over here, and I don't want to lose my voice. Somewhere on the edge of the city, a strong wind embraces the birch trees, changing their green leaves to silver in the thin morning. I think I just have a few more minutes, Judy. I'm going to read just two more pieces. I want to bookend this with a shout out to Lenny and SoFloPoJo, because these next two pieces were also published in the South Florida Poetry Journal. And they are two prose poems from a new manuscript that I just completed called Bone Country. And all you need to know is all of them take place in other countries. It's not America. I think there's even one about Australia, our friend from down under. But so all these prose poems, about 90 pages of them, are all about different other places in the world. So this is called The Daughter Draws the Pines of Rome. The daughter, who rarely talks to her mother, sits in the Colosseum, surrounded by the silence of the past. She likes the indifference of history, the cool reticence of the ancient marble that has witnessed so much pageantry and spectacle, so much pain and blood, but still maintains its distance. A distance she doesn't have to bridge. From her vantage point, she can see a grove of Roman pines across from the amphitheater. The archway perfectly frames one particular tree, as if the monument's anonymous architect placed his building at this intersection of stone and air just to capture the tree for this woman in the distant 21st century. In turn, she tries to capture it on the empty page of her notebook. The pale white comes alive with her pen and ink sketch. The thin trunk, the symmetrical umbrella of dense branches. She draws the tree as an answer to the question she knows her mother will ask back home. And my last poem that I'm going to read for you this evening, and thank you so much, all of you, for your attention, for joining us, joining Judy and Sandra and me. And this was actually just recently published in the South Florida Poetry Journal, and it's called Painted Toenails in Ukraine. The young girl who gives the American woman a pedicure in the town's most elite spa doesn't know the difference between a foot or a knee. The woman doesn't want to embarrass the girl and her lack of English vocabulary, so she never corrects her. Other knee, other knee, other knee is the mantra the woman sporadically hears as the right foot, and then the left, is covered with green kelp from the Black Sea and massaged into her skin's oblivion. Other than the incorrect word, the girl is silent. A thin gold Orthodox cross dangles from her neck as she daydreams about her lover's thigh. She paints the woman's toenails in such a hard, brilliant red that weeks later, no nail polish solvent can remove it. The woman will have to wait a year after the nails have totally grown out before every trace of the color is gone. The girl and her halting mantra, a silent echo.
Linda, thank you so much. It was such a delight to read your poems and now to hear them be read by you in your voice. What a gift you've given us tonight. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.